five are not going to satisfy a serial killer, right? There would be no actual number. It would be until you got caught.
We are not like other shows.
I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to be rude because you know how I am. Wasn't a very pleasant looking woman. I'm not trying to be a bitch, but just saying.
She was not a high class lady of the night.
I know, it looked like terrible. Some shit that you did in Kitty Corral school. Like, what?
Fucking awful.
Of course, he knows where she's buried, and it wasn't long after that. Like, he's like, I'm digging this bitch up. I need her vulva.
And in 2003, Nancy filed for divorce and issued a restraining order.
You want to smoke or vape? Even vaping is not allowed in the facility. You have to go outside.
A whole new level of horrific.
There was much you could do to change it, to be honest.
Hello, welcome to the You Run Podcast True Crime Extended Cut. My name is Scott and I'm your host for this episode. And again, unfortunately, I am all on my lonesome. So you're all going to have to keep me company. No, Heather, she's still off maternity leaves, dirty nappies, breastfeeding, all that kind of jazz. And Lisa, as I said on the last episode, wasn't available to do this one because of the sheer level of investigation that was needed. She's got a lot of work on and she just couldn't commit the time to put the investigation into this episode. This is the second part of our current case, which is on Robert Durst, the Jinx.
Next week, as part of an unusual plea deal, Durst will admit to a gun charge. That plea deal will ultimately land him in a Los Angeles courtroom on trial for the murder of his best friend.
Now 72-year-old Durst is pushing to be in a California courtroom by August to prove his innocence. Like O.J. Simpson, Robert Blake, and the man who called himself Clark Rockefeller, his trial will likely cause a sensation.
Today was the first of what will be a lifetime of days in prison for real estate heir Robert Durst. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for murdering a friend who'd been asking too many questions about the mysterious disappearance of Durst's former wife.
Robert Durst, guilty of a crime of first-degree murder.
State prison officials tell us Durst died early this morning at a hospital in San Joaquin County where he was being treated for a number of medical maladies. He had just been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole in California and was expected to face another murder trial in New York for the disappearance of his first wife in 1982.
Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then what you need to do is you need to go back one episode. So the episode before this is the episode that explains everything about this case. And this is Extended Cut, where we talk about more about the case and more weird and wonderful things about the case. If you know nothing about Robert Durst, I promise you, this Extended Cut is absolutely no good to you whatsoever. It is as much good as a chocolate teapot. Do not listen to this episode if you know nothing about the case or if you've not listened to our previous episode. If you have listened to the previous episode, or if you do know about the case, then stick around because there's a lot to go through. I'm going to give a quick, brief recap before we get into it. But before I do that, I need to give our disclaimer warning, as we've had several complaints over the last couple of months of people not realizing that the You Run podcast, True Crime, is a podcast about true crime and murder. Who would have thought it? So, if you have not listened before, this is a true crime podcast and contains discussions surrounding death, murder, serial killers, drug taking, you name it. If it's a crime, it's covered here. It is an opinionated show as well. So this is not a read from Wikipedia kind of show. This is we tell you some facts, then we give our opinions. They sometimes are not the opinions that you may have. We're all entitled to opinions. We are very opinionated here and we share them with you. They are just opinions though. There is no malice or ill intent or any nastiness meant with them. They are just on this episode, my views and opinions. And when I've got Heather or Lisa here, they're their opinions. It's nothing personal. If you are easily offended or you're upset about hearing about crimes or murder or drug taking, or you don't like any swearing, this is not the show for you. There are a million other true crime podcasts that don't do any of that you can go and listen to. You'll find them in whatever browser you're listening to us. However, If this does sound like your particular brand of Kool-Aid and you like foul language, lots of facts, lots of opinions, and yeah, just a real different true crime show, then stick around. Once you've listened and you've decided you like us, leave us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, because that makes a huge difference to the show and it helps us grow. It helps us reach a bigger audience. And that's kind of what it's all about. There's loads of you listening already, but I'd love there to be loads more of you. So on our last episode, we went through pretty much everything about Robert Durst. We covered everything from his wife mysteriously disappearing into thin air. We covered the fact that his friend, who acted as effectively as his alibi, Susan Berman, was killed execution style. We find out, I told you all about the accidental death of his neighbour Morris Black, who he blatantly killed and cut up into pieces, and then got a slap on the wrist. And we also talk about how everything come crashing down around his ears after he watched a Ryan Gosling movie. It happens. Ryan Gosling causes chaos in people's lives. No joke. If you've not listened to the last episode, go and listen to it now, because just the facts around how he ended up caught and charged and sentenced is just insane. Absolutely insane. On this episode, there's a couple of things I wanted to cover. One of which is the money, which we touched on in the last episode, but there's a lot of money. There's a huge amount of money involved in this case. Easily enough a motive for murder, easily enough for a cover-up, and definitely enough to create enough conspiracy theories around this. It's bordering on how we were with the smiley face killers. It's that level of, there's so much money involved, there's so much that could be done to hide and bury stuff, that everyone has an opinion on this. We're also going to look at a string of other people that I believe Robert Durst may have killed. Now, I personally believe that he committed his first murder in the early 80s. And this was the first of many. And I believe he pretty much consistently killed from the early 80s right up until his eventual arrest in 2015. I have linked several murders to his movements across the years, and it's only a theory. I'm not there. I'm not going through these crime scenes. I don't have the stuff in front of me, but the dates fit, the times fit, things fit. It all kind of comes together. And I personally think Durst could be one of the most prolific serial killers in an entire generation. I think he could be up there with Gacy. He could be up there with Bundy. He is, if I'm right, he is one of the most prolific serial killers of all time. And that's something we're going to cover a little bit later. We're going to talk cash. Lots and lots and lots of cash. And we all like money, and Durst loved money. So he was the son and heir to the billion-dollar Durst organization. Now, they are a property management and development company, and they still trade today. They're currently run by his brother, and they are a billion-dollar corporation, done huge skyscrapers, all kinds of cool stuff in New York. Really cool company, really cool buildings they've built as well. So, yeah, great. Really, really love some of the stuff they've built. In 1992, Durst's father, Seymour, died. And the tradition in that family would be that it was passed from father to son. So Seymour inherited it from his dad, and the idea was that Robert, being the oldest, would inherit the keys to the kingdom. That is not how it went down. Not at all, not even close. When Seymour died, he left the entire family fortune and the company to his younger brother, Douglas, not to Robert Durst. This caused a huge rift in the family. As far as Robert Durst was concerned, it was his birthright. This is what he should always have got, and he didn't get it. Don't get me wrong, Robert Durst was not a poor man by any stretch of the imagination. He still had trust fund money and access to money, and it's not a case of his dad gave him nothing, he just didn't give him the company. This led Robert Durst to sue his brother Who does that? He sued his brother for his share in the company, and he wanted to be part of the company. He never got that. So there was a deal done where he was bought out of the family trust in 2006 for $65 million. That is a huge sum of money to be bought out for, just in a lump sum. There's $65 million, Robert. Fuck off, is basically what happened. And Robert took that and carried on with his life for the 5 years before he got arrested, 10 years before he got arrested. There's no confirmation of this, but I've got a couple of theories as to why he didn't get what he wanted, why he wasn't given the keys to the kingdom. The first reason is he showed no interest in the company whatsoever. So if you listen to our main case, I talked about this a little bit, and I talked about it a little bit more now. So his dad wanted him to be part of the family business. He wanted him involved. He wanted him to be part of it and grow with it and eventually run it. Robert Durst had absolutely no fucking interest in the company whatsoever. So little interest, he moved states away and opened a health food shop instead. Now, if that was my son, I'd be like, well, you don't want anything to do with the company. Therefore, I'm going to now train your younger brother to take over the company, and we'll just give you some money in the inheritance. That would be me. The second reason that I don't think he got what he wanted is he was investigated heavily for the disappearance of his wife. Now, that is not a good look. For a billion-dollar company to have potentially their new CEO be investigated multiple times for the disappearance and potential murder of a person, that is not who you want fronting your company. That is not the headline you want in the Wall Street Journal. You don't want Durst Corporation inherited by Robert Durst, also investigated for disappearance and potential murder of his wife. That does not keep you a billion-dollar company. That causes customers to leave you. And I think that was probably the main reason he didn't get what he wanted. And would you want someone who'd been investigated like that to run your billion-dollar company? I know I wouldn't. In 2016, so we're jumping forward a bit now, 34 years after the disappearance of his wife, Kathleen, her parents attempted to sue Robert Durst, and they wanted $100 million. Now, they wanted $100 million, alleging that he had killed their daughter and deprived them of the right to bury her. This was after his arrest for the murder of Susan Berman and after the release of the documentary. So the documentary come out and they've gone, well, actually, yeah, you look pretty fucking good for this. And then they tried to sue him. Now, the lawsuit failed because there was no factual evidence to what they were bringing to the table here. This was we think you killed our daughter, we want $100 million. And it got thrown out of court. They had two further attempts between 2016 and 2021, and both of those were also thrown out. So they tried 3 times to get hold of the $100 million that Robert Durst was worth. You'd think that'd be the end of it after 3 failed attempts, but it wasn't. So in 2022, when Robert Durst died in prison of a heart attack, his family, they didn't. Kathleen's family filed again, and they filed to claim rights over the entirety of his estate, which is a little over $100 million. Now, in his will, he had set the estate to transfer to his wife. So his wife at the time of his death was Deborah Chartan. And as far as I can tell, she'd done nothing wrong. She's not involved in anything he'd done. She married him. They'd been married for a good amount of time. And then he got arrested. And it was as much of a shock for her as it was for everyone else when he got arrested. Now, when I recorded this episode, about 2.5 weeks ago, there was actually the latest section of this court case. So the judge said that they would hear the case, and they would hear the case of issuing the $100 million estate to Kathleen's family. This happened on the 26th of March, 2023. And so far, the outcome of the case has not been made public. So I can't tell you what happened. So if you're interested in this, keep an eye on it, because that will become public knowledge very, very soon. And you'll be able to find out whether his current wife got the money or whether it went to Kathleen's family. And this raised some questions for me. And they're questions that got raised when we were talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. Money is a strange motivator, and it makes people behave in strange ways. And like with Dahmer, you've got the family suing Netflix for damages for the Monster series, and you've got in this you've got family suing for money because of a disappearance. And I feel families are entitled to some sort of financial compensation. I don't know what amount of money is substantial enough to cover the cost of a loved one, because I don't think there is an amount of money for that. And I don't know who should get what either. And this is, in this case in particular, really complex. And like, so you've got Kathleen's family, and they're the ones who are suing for the $100 million. Now, her body has never been found. They don't know if she was murdered. They don't know if she ran away. They don't know anything. There's literally no proof tying her to Durst in a negative way. Now, what about Susan Berman's family? So Robert Durst was found guilty of killing her. He'd done that. That happened. He killed her. Should they not be entitled to the $100 million? How about Morris Black's family? Accident or not, we know that they had a struggle. A gun went off while it was in Robert Durst's hands, and he shot Morris. He then proceeded to dismember and dispose of his body. What about Morris's family? Should they not get a cut of this money? And being real devil's advocate, what about his current wife? She's done nothing wrong. She married a man that she didn't know was a killer. And now she's going to get nothing. I don't know. I don't know how you can evenly proportion who gets what and make that fair. It doesn't add up in my head, which is why I want to get your thoughts on it. So there's a couple of ways you can give us your thoughts. One is you can go to @YouRunPodcast on Instagram. You can record us an audio direct message, or you can go to TikTok, again, @YouRunPodcast, record a TikTok with no music, because we get done for copyright, and we can play that on the air as well. New feature, you can now email the show, yourunpodcast@gmail.com. So if you don't want to hear your voice on the air, you don't have to. You can just literally type what you want, and we'll read it on the air for you. So you can get involved that way as well. Before we get further into the murders that I believe Robert Durst committed, I'm pleased to announce and to introduce our new show partner. Now, I think a lot of you probably know this who listen regularly. I am a big indulger in energy drinks, and I mean big. I drink a lot of energy drinks, and I know they're not good for me. I know they're bad. I know I shouldn't be drinking them. In my quest to find healthier energy drinks, I stumbled across a company called Dubby. So Dubby do energy drinks. They come in a powder form. And what they do is they've got no sugar, they've got no calories, but they've got no colours, which is one of the really bad things in most energy drinks. I mean, if you pour an energy drink into a glass, it's fucking luminous blue. It's neon green, and that shit's not good for you. So they use no colours, and they use no fillers either, so they don't pack it out with loads of shit. It gives you no jitters, because that's something I suffer with too much energy drinks, and it doesn't give you a crash afterwards. You don't get that and go to sleep. And I can confirm that because I've been on them for a little while now. Infinitely better than some of the carbonated other brands that I had been poisoning myself with. it was from finding this that I got talking to Dubby, and we were talking about what we could do to work together. And what we've come up with is a discount code for you if you like energy drinks. So you need to go to dubby.gg. That's dubby.gg. And all you need to do is use YouRun10. That's YOURUN10 at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your order. And whether you order one tub or you order an entire range, or you order their starter trial pack, which is the way I started. I started with the trial pack, so you get a shaker and you get a tub of a flavour of your choice. And then I kind of went from there. Now I've got fucking loads of tubs. It's really good. But you get 10% off whatever you order. If you don't like energy drinks, you can still contribute to the show. Go to yourunpodcast.com, click on shop, and on there we've got various different T-shirts and merchandise and other stuff. One thing I want to say, because I don't think I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of podcasts basically go, join our Patreon, do this, do that, give us. And what they don't say is what they do with that money. Now, I don't put that money in my pocket. I don't split it and send some to Heather. I don't do anything with the money apart from buy better equipment and pay for advertising for this show. Every single penny we get goes back into making this show better and bigger for all of you. And I think it's important that I tell you that. I don't want you to think I'm here going, I need money, give me money, because that's kind of not what this is about. But I'm pleased to have Dubby on board. Welcome, Dubby. They're going to be with us for a while, at least until Christmas, while we try each other out and see if it works. So if you do like energy drinks, head to dubby.gg and use YouRun10 at checkout. Now, after I've done that bit, let's do some more murders, shall we? I said on the main episode that I believe Robert Durst had committed further murders that have not been linked to him. And I added that he could very well have been one of the most prolific serial killers in recent history. It's a bold-ass claim, and I got some backlash for my bold-ass claim. I had a couple of messages going, and you've made this deduction how? How are you going to justify this? And my response to all of them was, that's what Extended Cut is for. And we're here. So I made all these claims. I then went and watched the documentary, The Jinx, and I watched the movie, because I hadn't watched either of those when I'd done the main episode. I wanted to go in with an unbiased, uneducated view about the case. So I've watched both of those now. And I was worried that when I was going to watch them, it would change my opinions. It did not. Robert Durst is without a shadow of a doubt a serial killer. He has got issues upon issues upon issues, and every single clip you see of him, you can see it. Even in the movie, they paint him as an absolute lunatic. But that's not enough to convict on. Let's be honest. So let's go back to the beginning, and I'm going to go through how I think he got to where he got to. And I'm going to go through what I think he'd done and who I think he is. So let's kick off with his first wife, Kathleen. Now, there is no concrete evidence to link Durst to her disappearance or to her potential murder. To be honest, there's not even any evidence she was even murdered. I believe she was murdered. I believe Robert Durst is the one who committed the murder. And I believe this was his first murder. I think this is like most serial killers. Their first kill is something personal. I think this was a crime of passion because she was trying to divorce him for huge sums of money, and he just didn't want to do that. I think this was a pre-planned, but a rage-filled pre-planned murder. That's what I think happened. Now, first-time killer, how can he get rid of a body? This is where Susan Berman comes in. So Susan Berman, if you remember from the main case, she was a huge advocate for him. She, at their deposition for the disappearance, she acted as his alibi and almost his spokeswoman. She was pretty much advocate for everything. Everything Robert Durst come up golden when she spoke. And she gave him a concrete alibi. Now, her father was a high-ranking member in the Bugs and Meyer mob out of New York City. In 1982, her dad had passed away long ago. He'd been dead for quite some time. But I know, and I'm sure all of you know, the mob look after the families of their members. They always have. The mob is a family. And if one of their family members dies, they look after that person's family, which in this case would be Susan Berman. Which means in 1982, she still had connections to the criminal organisation that was the Bugs of Meyer mob. Now, this organisation will have changed names and it will have been swallowed up into one of the main 5 mob families that operate out of New York today. Without a doubt, the Bugs of Myers would not be going. They were a small-time mob that got absorbed into larger mobs. Now, what I think happened is I think Berman had a means to get rid of Kathleen with her mob connections. Durst had the money to facilitate this to happen. I believe she was abducted and I believe she was murdered, not by the mob, but by Robert Durst himself. I think the mob facilitated everything and Robert Durst was the one to do it. Now, I could be stretching with that. I could be really reaching, but that's what I genuinely believe happened. I can't see that Susan Berman's involvement and why she would give such a strong alibi. I don't see why she would do that unless she was connected in a heavy, heavy way. Now, we know for a fact that Durst killed Morris Black. Accident or not, he had a gun in his hand, they had a struggle, the gun went off, Morris Black died. He then dismembered his body and disposed of it. And it was while looking into this that I kind of thought, do you know what? This doesn't seem like the act of someone who's got in a bit of a scuffle and pulled the trigger. Someone to dismember a body that takes thought and time. Dismembering a body is not a 5-minute job. And I kind of got me thinking into, has he done this before? Would he do it again? And it led me down a path looking into things that the judge said, things that family members said. And there's a couple of bits that I've picked out that I think are very, very important. So the judge from the case, the Morris Black case, was interviewed in 2015 when the documentary came out. And she was asked if, at the time of the trial, did she believe that Durst had murdered Morris and that he'd disposed of the body? And she replied, you could see that this person knew what they were doing and it was not their first time. The body was cut perfectly like a surgeon who knew how to use this tool on the bone and a certain type of tool on the muscle. It looked like not a first-time job. That in itself is terrifying. This is a judge who's presided over countless amounts of cases, lots of murder cases. And for her to say this looked like it was not the first time, I believe her. If she said it's not the first time, it wasn't the first time. He's done this before. There's also a statement from his brother. So his brother claimed or avoided going to court numerous times as a character witness or a witness of any other kind. And when he did eventually go, one of the statements he made is that he was worried that Robert would kill him if he gave any evidence. And he said he truly believed that not only would Robert kill him, but he could kill him, and he had the means to kill him, and he had the means to make sure he would never, ever, ever be caught. That coming from your own brother is pretty fucking damning. This led me down a wild path. Wild. The places I went on the internet is, I've read so many articles, so many theories and Reddits and subreddits about this. And it kind of all led me to one place. It led me to a private investigator. Now, the private investigator is called Bobby Backer. And she worked on the Morris Black case. Now, I don't know how I feel about private investigators. They're paid to find shit. Some of them are very good, some of them not so good. Some of them are there just to make profit. Bobby Backer seemed pretty fucking legit from everything I've read. Her investigation didn't turn up a massive amount, but what it did turn up made my mind just go bang. So she found out that Durst had used several false identities. And he's had identities in Texas, in Florida, in Massachusetts, in New Jersey, South Carolina, Mississippi, out in Heather Country, and Virginia. Now, this led me to look in those areas for other crimes that may have been committed, because we know he traveled a lot across those states. And this led me to a case that I'd never heard of before. I'm pretty sure Heather's heard of this, and I'm pretty sure all of you listening have heard of this. The Long Island Murders. Now, the Long Island Murders are a string of serial murders that took place sometime between 1996 and up until 2010. It might be longer than 2010, but we'll get there. To date, there have been 15 sets of partial remains that were discovered. They were discovered in 2010 and 2011. Now, they were disposed of very similar to how Robert Durst got rid of Maurice Black's body. So in most cases, the bodies were dismembered with surgical precision, very similar to Maurice Black. They were dumped on a stretch of beach in various different locations. Now, I thought I was reaching with this, and I don't know if anyone did various different things like Wikipedia and other true crime like information blogs. They always have a bit in there which is like full of like interesting facts. It's like extra notes, extra case notes. And I was going, I'm stretching. I can't take this to people. People are going to think I'm just some fucking conspiracy nut. I stumbled on something. The FBI made this connection as well. Maybe I'm in the wrong job. So they made this connection, and they truly believed that Robert Durst was the Long Island murderer, to the point that they set up an informal task force in 2012 to work with agencies across state lines. And this was to re-examine cases in and around where Durst lived in the decades after his wife's disappearance and up until his arrest and incarceration. Now, the reason this was an informal task force is because it had to look at multiple cases. They couldn't just look at Robert Durst. It's an informal one. So this is FBI agents coupled with private investigators, coupled with true crime enthusiasts, effectively. It's effectively a crack team to try and track this down. The Long Island murders are still unsolved to this day. There's multiple suspects, but they're still unsolved. And the Long Island murders case is ginormous. It warrants an extended normal episode and a double-length extended cut just to go through everything they found. And it's a massive, massive case. Far exceeds what I can do here on extended cut. So, with that in mind, I've decided to add this case to our poll that comes out on the 3rd of May. So on the 3rd of each month on Instagram at YouRunPodcast, we put up a poll of what case you want us to cover next. The Long Island murders will be in there. So if you want me to tread this path further, and I'll be with someone if we get to this, I'll be with either Heather or Lisa. Someone will be with me. If you want us to tread down that path and pursue this and look at all of the possible suspects, I'm going to be looking at Robert Durst, but whoever is with me can look at other people. If you want us to go down that path, make sure you go to @YouRunPodcast on Instagram, follow us, and then vote in that poll. There are lots of places you can get additional information on this case. Loads. Obviously, there is The Jinx, The Life and Death of Robert Durst. And this is on HBO and Amazon Prime. This was the documentary that led to his arrest and his being charged with murder and being convicted, effectively. It's 100% worth a watch. I said on the main show, and I'm going to reiterate it now, this is heavily weighed against Robert Durst. Heavily weighed. Watching this, I very much get the feeling it was borderline a fit up. It was we're going to befriend him, we're going to get him on board, and then we're going to fucking bury him. That's kind of how it was. And it's kind of been confirmed that I watched it like that, and it's been confirmed because in 2019, the producers had to admit that at the end of the series, there's a bit where Robert Durst can be heard talking in a bathroom. It is basically he's incriminating himself in murders. And they admitted that had been edited out of context and out of order to make it sound worse. And I said on the main episode, like, editing things to sound good and bad is really easy with just audio. Really, really easy. You can make people sound the nicest person in the world. You can make people sound like the biggest arsehole in the world just by shifting and moving certain words around or dropping a word out. It's like with like pronunciation. Like you can make people sound terrible, and they've done that, and they had to admit it. There is the movie starring Ryan Gosling and Kirsten Dunst, who I quite like. This goes back a lot further in the case, and it tells the time of when Robert Durst kind of went, fuck you, to his family, and he went off and started his health food shop. It's wildly exaggerated, I think is fair to say. It's called All the Good Things, easy to find on most streaming services. Personally, I didn't like it. I know this is going to upset Heather. I'm not a fan of Ryan Gosling. He's just not that good. It just didn't do it for me. But it's interesting. It's an interesting watch. You also have several other documentaries, which I think are better than The Jinx. So you've got an episode of The Jury Speaks, where they covered the trial of Morris Black. And that is obviously, they're talking to the jury, they're talking to other people. And that case, just the Morris Black part of it is really, really interesting. And ABC have a documentary that came out last year, which is called Better the Devil You Know. And that spends a lot of time talking to people in Durst's life and people who were involved in his trial. Really, really, really interesting watch. I really enjoyed that. As always, you have the abundance of amateur documentary makers over on YouTube. Love all of them, watch loads of them as well. Some really good ones out there. And countless news articles online and Reddits and subreddits. There's literally a ton of information on this. Absolute ton. Now, in kind of a bit of a summary, in my opinion, Durst murdered his first wife. He murdered Susan Berman. And I struggled with a motive why on the main case, but now I think I know why. So she was being contacted by people who wanted to reopen Kathleen's disappearance case, and she was going to talk to them. Now, Robert Durst admitted that he was in the area. He also admitted that he sent her deposition notes. And I think the long and short of it, I think she was about to throw him under the bus. I think she was going to spill the beans on how she was involved. And I think she was also going to say how the mob was involved in the disappearance of Kathleen. I think she knew that Robert Durst killed her. And I think she was going to let all of that spill. And this is why Robert Durst flew to where she lived, went to her house and killed her execution style. That's what I think happened. We know for a fact he killed his neighbour, Morris Black. Doesn't matter whether it's an accident or not. He done that. He also dismembered his body. And I still can't get my head around the fact he only served 3 years in prison. But we'll come back to that. I think what happened here is either Durst confided in him and Morris Black was going to say something and he killed him, or they genuinely had a disagreement and Durst just snapped. I now firmly believe he is at a bare minimum the prime suspect, well, for me anyway, in the Long Island murders. I've had a little look into that case. I haven't gone full into it, but I think he could be the Long Island murderer. Serial killers are a scary prospect, really scary. And I've said openly on the show many times that I don't like true crime. I find it genuinely terrifying. It scares me far more than horror movies or anything like that. Robert Durst is a whole new level of scary. Now, a serial killer is one thing, but a serial killer with a shit ton of money is a whole different ballgame. So he's got the money to get fake IDs, to travel anywhere he wants. he's also got the money to get people to get rid of his bodies. He's got money to pay people hush money. And if he does get caught, he can afford the best legal representation in the world. And that's no lie. So like the legal representation he had for Morris Black was out of this world good. He killed and dismembered a man, a human being. He killed and dismembered them. He served 2 years behind bars. Mind-boggling. And that's because he had money. He had access to that great legal advice and that great legal team that all they're doing is looking for the loophole to get him off, which is what they've done. I firmly believe he was in the process of appealing the Susan Berman case. I firmly believe had he lived long enough to hear his appeal, he would be a free man today. I don't think they had enough in the Berman case to keep him behind bars with a decent legal team. I think he would have won the appeal. Durst has always maintained he's innocent of everything, literally everything. If you watch any interviews or anything he's done, he's literally innocent of whatever you say. Oh, you done this? No, I didn't. He is Mr. Super. I didn't do nothing. He shows no remorse, none whatsoever, because he's like, I didn't do it. I just don't. I can't get my head around him. He's such a strange guy. He was diagnosed with several mental illnesses, and no one diagnosed him as a psychopath. This guy shows no emotion whatsoever. I think he was a psychopath, but I'd love to know what you think on that. We will never get the truth of what happened, and that drives me wild. The only people who really knew what happened was Robert Durst, who died and took that information to his grave. And the only other person you might have known was Susan Berman, and Robert Durst killed her. So we are never going to get definitive proof unless we can get DNA now, which is unlikely. We're never going to find out what actually happened. And I don't think that that's a fair or fitting end to any of the families involved. I don't think it's a fair and fitting end for his current wife or current widow. And I don't think it's a fair and fitting end for any of you either. And I apologise for that. I want to get your thoughts on this case, and I want to get your thoughts just in general. I said earlier how you can call into the show, and you can also email us. And I know lots of you don't want to hear your voice on the air. You don't want to be podcasters, which is fine. So send us an email. yourunpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll read them out on the air. We'll get your thoughts, and we'll share what you think as well, and we'll discuss it. This case was a listener request, and it came in from Sarah. Honestly, Sarah, I could not have wished for a better case to investigate. This case is mind-boggling. I mean, genuinely mind-boggling. It's such a wild ride from start to finish, and has literally absorbed my life for the last 30 odd days, maybe a bit more. I delved so deep into this, and then I found the link to the Long Island murders, and I started investing. Honestly, you gave me a case that I could probably spend another 3 months investigating and be quite happy doing so, which doesn't happen very often for me. This case genuinely hooked my interest so much. So much. So Sarah, I want to say a huge thank you for requesting this case. I can't thank you enough. Not only was it great to investigate, but also great to share with everyone else. We will be back on the 1st of May with a brand new case, and I will not be alone. I will have someone with me, and I'm not going to tell you who, but I will not be here on my own. So you don't need to listen to just me drone on. You can listen to me and someone else drone on together. Next time, we are looking at a case which is probably one of the biggest cases in the world ever. Probably one of the cases that's been adapted and stolen for horror movies, for paranormal horror movies, for psychological movies, for true crime documentaries. This case has been done to death by everybody. And we're going to do it better. and we're going to do it different. And we're going to cover all the shit that you actually want to know. And we're going to share our opinions on it as well, as we're going to dive deep into the mind of Charles Manson as we look at the Manson murders. Until then, I want to say thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you so much for keeping all the support to the show going. You're brilliant. We grow episode on episode, and I'm genuinely blown away every single time I look at how many people listen to the show. Thank you so much. Make sure you go and follow us at You Run Podcast on whatever social media we're on. We're on Twitter, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram. I'm sure we're on some others, but I forget. Also, review us if you really enjoy the show, or you enjoy the show just a little bit. Give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It really helps the show. Thank you again so much for listening. Have a wonderful couple of weeks, and we'll be back on the 1st. Oh, before I go, don't forget, vote in our poll, the 3rd of May on each month on Instagram. Vote in the poll for the next case we do. Until then, have a wonderful couple of weeks. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all soon.
5 are not going to satisfy a serial killer, right? There would be no actual number. It would be until you got caught.
We are not like other shows.
I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to be rude because you know how I am. Wasn't a very pleasant looking woman. I'm not trying to be a bitch, but just saying.
She was not a high class lady of the night.
I know, it looked like some shit that you did in Kitty Corral school. Like, what?
Fucking awful.
Of course, he knows where she's buried, and it wasn't long after that. Like, he's like, I'm digging this bitch up. I need her vulva.
And in 2003, Nancy filed for divorce and issued a restraining order.
If you want to smoke or vape, even vaping is not allowed in the facility. You have to go outside.
A whole new level of horrific.
There was much you could do to change it, to be honest.